Hello there, guys, and welcome to class. Teacher Krishna here. This is the biology subject, and we are working on week number 6. Let's start with our presentation, and here you have the topic and ending mind. Lesson number 5, homeostasis in cell processes. And the ending mind is the following: recreate the process of homeostasis in cells through the experimentation with flowers and the application of the scientific method. Today we are going to be completing an experiment which I'm pretty sure you're going to find pretty interesting. Okay, so what activities do you have to do? First, you have to read and summarize lesson number 5. Remember that reading is super important in my subject. So access your online book, read the subject, and write down the most important information in your notebook. Then conduct an experiment related to osmosis and share your results with the rest of the class. Okay, please take into consideration both of these activities. And let's start right away with our topic. And we have the question, what is homeostasis? What is that pretty interesting word in there? Well, homeostasis is the maintenance of a constant internal state in a changing environment. So homeostasis is something that can be applied to all living beings, especially with humans. Let's say that we have a certain processes that keep us in a normal state. For example, the normal temperature in our body should be in between 35 to 36 degrees Celsius. So that's part of the homeostasis processes, because everything that is going inside our bodies is helping us out to maintain that specific temperature. Not only that, but we can talk about the process of how do we call this one? The process of oxygenation. Now I remember. So the process of oxygenation means that we are constantly providing ourselves with oxygen whenever we're breathing in and breathing out. Okay, so that's another process that can be related to homeostasis. Also, homeostasis ensures that cells can obtain and use energy, make new cells, exchange materials, and eliminate wastes in a changing environment. Unicellular organisms exchange materials directly with the environment. So remember that unicellular organisms are organisms that are made up of one cell. So they directly absorb components such as water or other materials that they can use as food. But that is something that happens directly with the environment. They don't need to go through other processes, unlikely multicellular organisms. And multicellular organisms have systems that transport material to cells from other places within the organism. For example, when you eat lunch, let's think about it. We're having a very delicious chicken soup. So you are going to consume this type of food from your mouth, then it is going to be transported to your stomach. Then due to the acid components that we have in the stomach, then all of the materials are going to be broken down. And at the end, all of those materials and nutrients are going to be transported to the cells in our body. But we can see the difference right here. It's not directly. It's not something that happens right away. Okay? And then the cardiovascular systems in humans and xylem and phloem in plants are transport systems. Okay. And how do cells get energy? Cells get energy by breaking down materials, just like the ones we were mentioning with food. It happens a little bit different in plants, and that's part of the experiment that we are going to do later on. Plants, algae, and some bacteria make their own food by a process called photosynthesis. The photosynthesis process is something very simple to understand. So basically what they do is absorb sunlight. They also use some water. And after some processes, they are going to change this, all of these materials into sugar. And sugar is what they are going to use as their food and main source of energy. In the presence of sunlight, carbon dioxide and water are converted to sugar and oxygen in the chloroplasts. So this is very important. Also, carbon dioxide is another component that is part of photosynthesis. And in order for carbon dioxide to turn into oxygen, we need sunlight, We also need water. Lastly, we are going to include the chloroplasts. The chloroplasts are parts of the plant cell that can actually change carbon dioxide into oxygen and sugar. Okay, plants and animals use oxygen during cellular respiration to produce energy from food. That's also important. So in this case, since can be considered as animals as well, cellular respiration is going to take place after we eat food, and it is going to produce some energy. Sugars and oxygen are converted to water, carbon dioxide, and energy during respiration. Photosynthesis and respiration are linked because each process depends on the products of the other. Just notice something very important. In humans and in animals in general, we are only going to have a cellular respiration. But in plants, we are going to have both cellular respiration as well as photosynthesis. Oh, and now this is something interesting to analyze. How do cells divide, or how do they multiply? Cells grow, divide, and die at different rates and for different reasons. In eukaryotes, DNA is copied before a cell can divide. So this is something amazing because let's say that cells are going to copy and paste their genetical information. So at the end, they are going to generate an exact copy or an almost exact copy of themselves. The nucleus and the rest of the cell divide to make two new cells. And they have to go through a process that is called mitosis. Mitosis is cell division that forms two new nuclei that are identical to each other. Nuclei means daughter cells or the offspring of the cell. So in very general terms, we can say that in the mitosis process, cells are going to copy their genetical information. They are going to start growing a little bit, and then they are going to separate, and we're going to have, as a result, two different cells. DNA is packaged as chromosomes in the cell. And it also happens in the mitosis process. And since they are synthesizing the DNA information, they are going to be synthesized in these structures that we know as chromosomes. Chromosomes are like X's, let's say. They have the shape of an X. And during mitosis, the chromosomes are separated and genetic material is split evenly between the new genetically identical cells. And how do cells exchange materials? Well, cell membranes are semi-permeable, allowing only certain particles to move into or out of the cell. The movement of materials across a cell membrane without the use of energy is called passive transport. This is a very important word, please. I'm pretty sure that you're taking notes right now, so you can write it down somewhere around. Passive transport is when materials are flowing around the cell membrane without the use of energy. Okay. Oh, and here we have probably the most important word that we're going to use in our experiment today. Osmosis. Osmosis is the diffusion of water through a semi-permeable membrane, which means that water is going to flow in or out of a membrane depending on the concentration of water both out and inside the cell. We are going to prove it in a moment with the experiment that we are going to conduct. Also, we have another word, which is diffusion. And it is the movement of molecules from high concentrations to low concentrations. Large molecules move into and out of cells through protein channels. Okay, and at some point, the movement of tea out of the bag stops or slows down considerably. Why do you think that happens? Think about it, think about it. We have this bag of tea. When we place it inside our cup and we start moving it a little bit, you can notice that little by little it starts going out. But after a while, then it stops. Why does that happen? Think about it and we'll discuss it later. Oh, and now we have here the active transport, which is the movement of particles against the concentration gradient and requires energy. So in passive transport, what happens is that we have a very high concentration of water, let's suppose. So since there is a very high concentration of water out of the cell, and it can easily flow inside. But with active transport, it's different. So we are going to move materials from a low concentration to a high concentration of that material. So let's suppose that the cell wants to expose some water to a very high concentration of body of water. Then that is going to classify as active transport. Endositosis and exositosis are forms of active transport that move large particles into and out of cells. Okay, those two words are very important as well, endositosis and exositosis. Endositosis means that the particles are transported inside of the cell. And exositosis means that they are expulsing the material. And why are both active and passive transports necessary to move materials into and out of cells? Think about it. Think about it. And again, we are going to discuss about this later on. Okay, and we continue with the endositosis process, which is a process by which a cell uses energy to surround and enclose a particle in a vesicle to bring the particle into the cell. Means basically that it is going to pack a material and it is going to take it inside of the cell. On the other hand, we have exositosis, which is a process by which particles are enclosed in a vesicle in a cell and released from the cell. Basically, we are expulsing material from the cell. And how do organisms maintain homeostasis? Well, cells and whole organisms must work to maintain homeostasis in a constantly changing environment. Some animals adapt their behavior to control body temperature. Just like us, just like humans, we manage to control our body temperature in probably a different and natural ways since we are using clothes. And animals don't, they never use clothes, right? So they have use other mechanisms to maintain the homeostasis in their bodies. Trees can show seasonal responses to change in the environment. So if we analyze the different seasons, specifically fall and winter in the United States, what is going to happen is that the trees are going to lose all of their leaves. But it's very weird because after fall and winter has passed by, then what happens is that then all of the leaves and all the nature starts coming alive again. So it happens because they have adapted to these conditions. And that's another example of how they maintain their homeostasis in their bodies. Okay, and just to give a small introduction on our experiment and everything, here you have some of the steps, well, most likely all the steps you need to include in your scientific report today. Observation plus question, hypothesis, experimentation, analysis, and conclusions. So we are going to expand this a little bit more in our live session, but do me a big favor. Before the live session, remember that you need to have a container with water. You need to have a white rose, well, most likely 2 white roses. So please, right now, I would like you to use only one of them, okay? Only use one of them. Place it inside water, but the water needs to have some food colorant, okay? So you can add some little drops of food colorant into a glass of water. You can mix it and then place only 1 white rose in there, okay? And we'll see what happens in a moment. So we are going to go over the steps of the scientific method in a while. And that'll be about it for today, guys. It's been a great pleasure to see you, and goodbye. Take care.